everyone, my name is Tabitha and I thought today that I would make a video kind of explaining my experience of studying psychology. So first of all, quick disclaimer, if you see ears popping up here, that's because my dog is laid next to me. So yeah, he's just chilling beside me. So I study psychology at Edinburgh Napier University and I'm in my second year. I've finished second year, so I'm halfway through my degree, because in Scotland the way degrees work are that they are a 4-year degree. As well as that, I know with most degrees you study different subjects alongside your degree for the first 2 years, I think, and then you do more kind of specialising in your subject. At Napier we mostly just study psychology. We don't get other options. That was actually one of the reasons why I chose to go there, because the idea of taking other subjects just wasn't for me. So that's just the experience I've had, but it will not differ hugely to other universities. It's just that I'm going to be focusing on all psychology because that's all that I've experienced. So I'm kind of going to split this video up by talking about a few different areas. So I'm going to start off by talking about different subject areas within psychology, the kind of things that you learn about and do. I'm also going to talk about how much I am in university, how kind of the course is structured, and then I'm also going to talk a bit about assessment, how we tend to be assessed. Obviously I know this will vary from uni to uni, but generally it's quite similar. And then lastly, I'm gonna just have a wee talk about job opportunities that I know are available if you do a psychology degree. So before I dive straight in to talk about all the different subject areas, I'm gonna cover one thing that I think a lot of people don't realise about studying psychology, is that there is quite a bit of mathematics entailed. It's not, I'm not meaning this in a way to put anyone off, because it's not difficult maths, which I will go on to talk about. At my university we do one module of research methods a year. This is split up into quantitative and qualitative research methods. Quantitative works with statistics, so when you might read experiments, it might say that they did some kind of statistical analysis, maybe a t-test. If you don't know what that is, don't panic, you learn it all very quickly at the start of your degree. And they might cover some statistics, and you yourself may then be asked to carry out some studies and do some statistical analysis. This is done using SPSS, which for a lot of people is the devil. People hate SPSS, but it's basically an online software that does these statistical analysis for you. You just program in what you want it to do. So I think that is why I would tell people not to worry about the mathematic element, because you yourself, for my uni anyway, are not asked to work out things by hand. You just need to know how to put it into SPSS, which at my uni you're taught very well, a step-by-step guide. It's more the concept of what you're actually doing that can be difficult to wrap your head around, but if you get yourself a good textbook, you listen to the lecturers, and YouTube as well has some really great videos talking you through step-by-step how to do things, it really isn't that bad. So please don't let the maths aspect of it put you off, because like I said, you won't really be required, from me anyway, to do anything by hand. As well as this, research methods isn't just focusing on the mathematics side. You do stuff called qualitative research, which can include interviews, observation methods. So even within this module that you will have to do on research methods, it won't just be purely using SPSS. So if that's something that may have put you off, please do not let it. So now I've covered one part of a psychology degree, learning about research methods and statistics, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. There are loads of different areas in psychology, you know, it's study of the mind, and within that there are loads of different areas. So that some of the main ones which you may come across include cognitive. This is kind of how the inner workings of the mind work, almost treating the mind as a machine. So you may learn about things like memory, attention, perception, problem solving, all within that area, and that is a really super interesting area. I would say quite similar to things that you would learn if you did higher, obviously in Scotland, or A-level. You I know for me at Higher I learned about memory, so it was interesting to do cognitive to delve a bit deeper into that area. Another area is social psychology, so this focuses a lot more on how we behave in groups, which is also kind of interesting for people if you weren't sure on psychology or sociology. It gives you kind of a bit of micro sociological stuff in a way, because you learn how we behave in groups, things like conformity, obedience. You might look at things like aggression, and that is a really nice area. It is also not too kind of biological, so I'd say that is a realm that is quite easy to understand if you're someone that doesn't love kind of the biological side and finds that hard to remember. It's really interesting. Another area that I have studied is individual differences, and this looks at, well, individual differences, how we differ from each other. This can be things like our motivation, personality, intelligence, and there are loads of different theories on these concepts, and that is really interesting to learn more about, you know, how we as people are different from everyone around us. Another key realm of psychology, which a lot of people don't like, but it's in there, a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, is the more biological side. This covers topics like sleep, which is obviously very biological. You learn about sleep cycles. It also learns about motivation in the sense of motivation to eat and to keep your body nourished, etc, etc. And for me, we also did things on kind of vision, things like that. So if you're interested in the more sciencey side, that's for you, and if you're not, don't worry, because you get the social side. It's a nice balance of learning about all these different areas. So as far as I can remember, that was the kind of main realms that we got taught about at the very beginning of our degree. There are loads of different kind of subtopics within psychology that if I was to be here all day to discuss them, this would be such a long video. So briefly, some of the other topics that we covered are things like child development, work psychology, educational psychology, which all very interesting, but I think that probably will differ between university as to which kind of speciality subjects within psychology are covered. So if you take one thing away from this part of the video, I would take away that psychology is such a vast subject and you cover so many different areas, and if you're thinking there's one part of it that doesn't interest you, there will certainly be another part that does interest you. So don't just go in thinking it's going to be all about maybe cognitive style stuff, because it really is a general mix, and you will get options to take different realms of psychology that you prefer. So now I'm going to go on to talk about how my hours are split. This will definitely differ between university, but just because of the general subject matter, obviously you don't do as much, for example, lab hours as someone studying like biology. So I'm just going to give, in my experience, what it's generally been like. So at my university you do 3 modules a term, and then for each module there has generally been 2-hour lectures and 2-hour tutorials for each module. This can differ. Sometimes a subject may decide to only do 1 tutorial every 2 weeks, or just a 1 hour, or maybe 2 1-hour lectures a week. It really does differ uni to uni, but the way that they are laid out is what I'm more kind of going to focus on. So the lectures, obviously kind of the same for any subject. You're in a huge lecture hall and you have the lecturer at the front speaking to you. You take notes, then at the end you can ask questions, but it isn't very interactive. That is where tutorials come. Now tutorials, you will get set readings usually of, you know, a psychological nature. You get set a reading, you go into the tutorial and you discuss it. These are in groups of no more than maybe 20 to 30. It's going to differ slightly between university, but in my experience it's no more than 20 to 30. So whilst there, you maybe get put into groups to discuss whatever preparation you've been asked to do. It isn't always a reading, it could be to research something. And then you come together, you discuss it, and these are a really great way to kind of complete your understanding, because you're there with a lecturer going through it, talking through it, a lot more opportunity to ask questions. This is also the time where you would ask questions on any work you've been set that you're struggling with. Most subjects within your degree will generally do tutorials, apart from things that require a lab. So the lab, what we call at my university, is just a room with loads of computers. It's not like a science lab as such, but it is called the lab. So you will go into a room with loads of computers, and this is used for research methods to gain access to SPSS. It's very interactive. You get kind of set a task, and as well you'll use these labs if you're going to be doing any experiments. You go in here, programs might get set up with the computers, and you do experiments. So that is how, in my experience, it has been laid out. You do usually get set prep work, so reading each week. It might be a chapter from a textbook that will then be covered in the lecture, and then a more specialised thing that you have to read for a tutorial. But you do usually get set things that will help to widen your understanding when you do go to those lectures and those tutorials. So now I'm going to go on to talk about assessments and how I have, in my experience, been assessed. It is worth mentioning that at my university we do summative assessments and formative assessments. The formative assessments do not actually count towards your grade, but you do it, you get feedback, kind of just to monitor where you're at, so they are handy to do. I don't know if every university does this. I know that some do, but it just depends. And then the summative assessments obviously count. So each module, it is up to the module leader to decide how they are going to split your marks for that module. So they may decide to do 50% on an essay, 50% on an exam, or it could be 40, 60. It really can vary. So it is good to look at how that is split marks wise to work out what you need in each thing and what would be good to get in each thing. So in my experience, it has been quite a mix of assessment methods. Quite often you may be required to do a research project. This may be interviews, this may just be a literature review. It can be a number of things, could be an experiment, and you'll be asked to work that out, maybe use SPSS or some other methods and submit a research report. And this is quite a common way of assessment. As well as this, you do sometimes just get set essays, which are set out a little bit differently to a report. So maybe to go and do your own literature search on a topic, answer a specific question that doesn't require using research. So it's split quite equally between a research report and an essay, which are very different, but you will obviously get taught about that if you decide to study psychology. Some of these things can be in groups, so you could be asked to do your essay or your report in a group. This is more common in first and second year. I think now me going into third and fourth year, they're going to take away group things. So as well, we've had things like group presentations where we get set a topic, research it, think of a presentation and present it to a small group and a lecturer. Obviously, we do have exams. There can be different style of exams. For example, sometimes we will have a multiple choice exam, which is quite nice. It is what it says it is. You revise something, you don't have to revise it as in depth as you would if you were revising for a proper exam, but they're usually only worth about 10-20% of your marks. As well as this, you obviously have written exams that take place at Christmas or in about April-May time, and these could be on the whole course of one module or on some of the course. It depends what the module leader has decided they want assessed. And then for this, you'll go away, you have to do your own independent reading from textbooks, your own reading online, and then cite this research that you've read about in your exam, where you will get questions, and they're usually always essay-based questions for something like psychology. So that's another major thing with all these assessment methods, is there's a lot of reading involved in psychology. I don't think I realised just how much reading there is, which for me is not great because I am such a slow reader, but you do get set a lot of reading because it's quite an in-depth subject where some of the concepts are quite hard to grasp, and reading is essential. And if you're writing essays and things, the more references and people that you can use, the showing that you've done wider reading is great. to a marker. So that's another thing to consider, that there is a lot of reading if you're going to choose to study psychology. I know that at some other unis you may get asked to do posters. We got asked to do one academic poster, which is a poster, you can make it colourful and bright, but you have academic papers referenced in there. It's quite a fun way to be assessed, but we have only been assessed that way once. So I'm now going to go on to talk a little bit about job opportunities. Now, from what I know, psychology is a very employable degree. I read an article not too long ago, it might have been The Guardian, on about how psychology is one of the most employable degrees because you learn so many transferable skills. You can go into so many different areas. So obviously you can go into things like counselling psychology, clinical psychology, forensic psychology, into working with the police. You could go into educational psychology, so working with schools. You go into work psychology, so helping make kind of recruitment activities. There are lots of further areas that you can go into which require, well, not only even sometimes masters and a PhD, but experience which can be gained. For example, if you were to go into counselling psychology, maybe working on a mental health ward, getting some valuable experience. Obviously further study isn't for everyone, so you can choose to go into things like social work and working in HR and human resources. These are areas that people don't always realise that psychology graduates can go into, but if you think about it, you're learning how people work, what makes people tick. So going into something like HR or advertisement is very valuable because you can know like how to catch customers' eyes. You as well can also continue in academics, continue researching, maybe even become a lecturer. That's another thing that I don't think a lot of people realise. If you really enjoy studying and have really enjoyed doing your degree, then you could just decide that you want to carry on and become a researcher and work your way up that way. So that is kind of a roundup of, from what I can think of, areas that you can go into with a psychology degree. There are loads of different areas, so if you're maybe on the fence and you're thinking, I really enjoy psychology but I'm not sure what I could go into, I would say just go for it, because at the end of the day you are learning transferable skills. If you get to the end of it and realise that you're done with psychology, you can pick something else and mould your degree to that specific subject, as long as it's obviously not something more vocational like veterinary. So I hope this video has been helpful. Whether or not you are sure you want to do psychology and watch this just for some information, or you're a bit on the fence, I've tried to just be as honest as possible and give you my experience. If anyone has any further questions, feel free to write me a comment. I'll be happy to be of any further help that I can be. And please do like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.